Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sports Shorts Daily, presented by LeBears Casino. Ronnie Rance alongside Tommy Christ and TK coming to you from Tremonti's Meat and Seafood in Baton Rouge. Go ahead and get your crawfish orders in over at Tremonti's, and of course, tailgating platters. Ain't nobody does it better. There's going to be a lot of tailgating going on this weekend. LSU baseball taking on Arkansas, top five, top six team in the country, depending on the polls, and the weather is going to be expected to be really well, as really good as well. LSU got back on the winning track last night, albeit it was a close one. We'll break down that game. Tigers won 10-5. It was 4-4 in the bottom of the fifth. World Baseball Classic. It was a classic last night. Japan beat the United States 3-2 to win their third overall World Baseball Classic championship. In the five that they played previously, United States had one, Dominican Republic had one. And we'll get into that. There was an Ohtani versus Trout matchup that everybody, the whole baseball world's been talking about. They will play again in 26. And there's also an interesting story about the USA Cuba matchup that I'll tell you about from a couple nights ago. Major League Baseball rules got a couple weeks left of spring training, and the Players Association's wanting some of that pitch clock stuff to be possibly changed. Tommy will get into that. Women's basketball, they are in Greenville, South Carolina, getting ready for that 4 o'clock matchup against Utah, the number 2 seed. If they win, they'll play Villanova or Miami on Sunday. And the New Orleans Saints had a couple free agent signings. Nobody is super of note, but Baton Rouge's own Malcolm Roach will be back with the Saints. That's always good news. Let's first bring in a little LSU baseball talk before we get to the World Baseball Classic. Tigers win 10-5 over Central Arkansas yesterday. Another game, Tommy, where they did not commit an error. That kind of goes by the wayside. We don't really talk much about it, but it's the last stat probably we talk about this year. But another clean night on the sheet. LSU took a 4-4 game into the bottom of the fifth and then finally ran away with it.
Well, Blake Money did great first time through the lineup. He was mowing them down, hitting his spots. And then that old thing, that second time through the lineup, the Bears started getting the bat on the ball a little bit. Actually took the lead 4-3 at one point with a 2-run bomb, Oppo shot. But Dylan Cruz got it going in the first inning for the Tigers with a missile out of right center field. Wow, that's unbelievable. But bullpen did a good job coming in, getting it done. A couple of walks from Collins, but one of those long games again with lots of offensive timeouts and lots of both mound visits and pitching changes. But bottom line, I got back on the winning track, like you said, after losing Sunday. And it doesn't get much bigger than it's going to be this weekend with the Razorbacks coming to town, who won last night 12-2, 10-run rule job against Southeast Missouri State. I know nothing about Southeast Missouri State, but the Razorbacks, as you said, Ronnie, ranked 5 or 6, depending on which poll you look at. 2 of the games, Friday's on ESPN2, Sunday's on the main ESPN platform. So there's some bad weather rolling in Friday. Don't know whether that'll affect that game. You got to keep an eye on that.
A couple of things, Tommy. While I'm talking about the game last night, look up on the box score and the emails that we get from Bill Franquez and see what the time of the game was. I'm curious because I've got a comment about that. So LSU last night, Blake Money got the chance, and boy, how far Blake Money has fallen from a standpoint of, Paul Mainieri's last year, he was their Friday night starter at the beginning of the SEC, and they thought he was going to have a really big year. It didn't quite work out that way. He did get a lot of work, but the numbers weren't very good. And even though he's lost some weight and he seems to, have gotten himself to a good spot, it's just it's not in the tank for him the way we thought it would be. Now, he's also on a team where he's compared to other dudes that are all dudes. And so if he was pitching somewhere else, Blake Money would pop off the screen a little bit more. But right now, you're on a team where, one bad inning out of 4, all of a sudden back to the drawing board we go, and then we'll have to deal with it all over. What kind of time did you get, Tommy?
The box score online didn't have the time of the game, and I did look at it earlier. I can't remember exactly, but it was over 3 hours, obviously.
Yeah, last night's game was definitely
326. I want to say
it was that long. Yeah, I mean,
and I could be off a minute or two there. I'm gonna try to
so
find
last
that
year
email.
LSU played a couple of 9-inning games that literally went over 4 hours. I mean, it wasn't extra innings. It was 9-inning games, and I thought the whole time last night that would have been a 4-hour game. On average, LSU baseball games are 30 minutes faster this year, for 9 innings than they were a season ago. But anyway, get back to last night. Jordan Thompson, who, we've talked a lot about other players that are having fantastic years, but Tommy Thompson, Jordan Thompson last night, Tommy, big home run in a 4-4 ball game, made it happen. And Jay Johnson talked about that. This guy is playing flawlessly at shortstop. He's improved tremendously. Everybody thought he was going to transfer. There he is defensively putting it up. He's hitting like 276 right now, but it feels better than that. He's had some tough luck. He feels like he's hitting more like 300, but he's hitting 270 something. He's been definitely one of the better, most improved players on this team.
No question about it. And as you said, Jay Johnson made reference to that. Last year he struggled at short. We learned after the year that he had some kind of knee procedure right before the season and wasn't totally healthy in the first 25 or 30 games. And he did improve the back half of the season, especially defensively. But he's got power. He hit that home run at Minute Maid last year to beat Oklahoma. He's got power, and that ball he hit out of left center last night, that thing was gone off the bat. It wasn't one of them like, okay, that might be gone. No, that was power. That was gone. So, if he can continue to play flawlessly at short, that's a big plus for LSU. You muted yourself, Ronnie.
Yeah, the fat fingers got me. LSU going to play Friday night. Will be a tremendous crowd, of course, but barring that the weather is not anything too crazy for Friday night. It wouldn't be the worst thing for Jay Johnson and the team. Be bad for the fans. Wouldn't be the worst thing for Jay Johnson and the team if all of a sudden Paul Skeens got an extra day's rest. If all of a sudden they had to play a doubleheader on Saturday, I don't think Jay Johnson's going to cry in his milk. That's for sure.
Good point by Byron right there. The speed of the LSU games improved due to better starting pitching and a lack of errors. And, of course, that's two key points by Byron that would affect the time of the game.
All right, let's move on to the World Baseball Classic. It was so successful this year. Of course, they have not played since 2017, and this is something that has to be in the player agreement between MLB and the Players Association. It's already been scheduled for 2026. That was already in the negotiations and the current collective bargaining agreement. So they will have another one 3 years from now. And that was sort of the plan originally when they started the World Baseball Classic back in the 2006 or something, was to do it every 3 years. So hopefully that stays the case because I'm a big fan. Only people that aren't are control freaks in Major League Baseball that don't like sending off their players for a couple weeks during spring training to go play. But nowadays, guys take care of their body 365. They're only sending off players for the most part that are dudes. And so, hopefully this is something that will get re-upped after 2026 and they can play it every 3 years. But it was so successful, particularly when they moved it to Miami for the semifinals and the finals. They had giant crowds, sold-out crowds. Of course, none bigger than Cuba versus the United States. First time those two teams have ever played each other in Miami. And, of course, Miami, the Cuban, capital outside of Havana. And so, you had protesters outside. You had bands playing. You had people wearing – waving the Cuban flag, you had people waving the American flag. And a good friend of ours and a good friend of the program, Louis Garcia, was at the game in Miami, literally sat on the second or third row next to the commissioner of the World Baseball Classic. A good friend of his, Mike Hill, is a guy who used to be with the Marlins back in the day. Now he's in the commissioner's office with the MLB office, and he's poised to potentially one day be the commissioner of baseball, potentially. Mike Hill is a friend of Lou's and gave him a couple tickets, and so he had great seats. But what Mike Hill didn't realize was he gave him 2 tickets literally next to the Cuban dugout. And Louis is a Cuban American whose parents literally were run out of the country in the early '60s and on a boat and all that kind of thing. Kind of the typical American story, built themselves from the ground up. Everything they knew and loved was gone in Cuba, and so they had disdain for the communist regime, as you can imagine, and don't want to support Cuba, the government, in any sort of way, because all they do is take from the poor to feed themselves. And he told me a couple interesting facts that the Cuban national team, this World Baseball Classic Cuban team, got $18 million more for making it to that quarterfinals. They got $18 million. The players, though, on the team only received $3,000 each. Now, they did stay at the Ritz-Carlton on Key Biscayne and all that. So assume that between all the players and coaches and travel and uniforms and equipment and maybe like entourage type fees and things, maybe they spent $1 million. 17 million went back to the Cuban government. And of course, the contention is you've got people starving in the streets over there, and 17 million went right into the pocket, not into improving facilities for the baseball program or anything like that. 17 million went right into just paying for the funding. So he was giving business to the players. He was mostly upset, and I didn't even realize this because I didn't watch a ton of the game. I was flipping back and forth, but there were 4 players that on the Cuban team that are current major leaguers, all making millions and millions of dollars. A couple of them have $100+ million contracts, Tommy, and yet there they were. They defected. They came to the United States. They claimed citizenship. They claimed that they were leaving a communist regime government and all that, and yet they elected to play on the Cuban team and wear their flags and make money for their government, for this communist government. And that did not sit well, not only with Lou, but a number of people. There were tons of protesters. There were a lot of people that were totally against allowing these defectors it came to the United States and have made hundreds of millions of dollars to then go back and bring their money to this Cuban, this communist regime. So there was a lot of storylines to this World Baseball Classic beyond what was on the field.
Well, and follow the money. Money can cause strife and disinterest, and it can cause problems. And certainly, as Louis referred to, and he knows more about it than you and I, it was a big issue. And we'll see if that carries over, into 2026 when they do this again. But it had the highest TV ratings ever, with the World Baseball Classic. And, all day yesterday, everybody said, man, we hope Ohtani throws to Trout. Well, that's how the game ended. He struck him out with a breaking ball. He threw 200-mile-an-hour fastballs and a breaking ball. Look, Mike Trout, he's only been in 3 playoff games in his major league career. 3. He's got 3 MVPs, and he's been in 3, and he's 1 for 12 in those 3 playoff games. And then last night was his chance to hit the homer, tie the game, get on base. Didn't happen against his teammate Ohtani. It was, and Ohtani hit 435 in the tournament, had a save, and it was incredible on the mound. Argument can be made he's the greatest baseball player in at this time in the world.
I think he is, no question about it. He's an all-star at both positions, and doing it at the same time. Nobody does that, not since the days of Babe Ruth. The Trout matchup was sensational. I mean, obviously the pitcher always benefits those types of matchups. I mean, if the guy gets 3 hits out of 10, he's a Hall of Famer. So, 7 times he's going to make out, and this was the first time they ever saw each other. Ohtani, literally, as you mentioned, Tommy, 200-mile-an-hour fastballs. One was down at the knees. The other was a belt high right down the middle. Couldn't catch up. But that 3-2 wipeout slider, when you've got to get your front foot down, and on the 2-2 pitch, he cranked it to 102, threw it kind of down and away, but it was 102 miles an hour. And so, with nobody on, up a run, he's sitting on fastball. There's no reason for Ohtani to throw that slider when Trout is, seeing 102 miles an hour on the fastball. And yet he goes to the slider, and it might have been, in my opinion, Tommy, the greatest slider in the history of baseball. And I know that's hyperbole, but in that moment, and I don't remember what the speed was, but it was probably a 90-mile-an-hour slider at least. and it broke all the way from the inside, corner to the outside corner edge black. I mean, it was a frisbee sharp 90 plus slider. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was an
Well,
unbelievable pit.
it almost looked like one of them things we could do in the backyard with the wiffle ball when it just
Right.
breaks like ridiculously crazy, like when the wind's blowing in, you throw that wiffle ball and it goes nuts. No, it was something to see. Hey, I can see him throwing the slider there, because they're up a run. It's the ninth inning, and let's throw what he ain't looking for. And Ohtani got it right, and Trout couldn't have hit that ball in 100 years. So,
I mean, the fact that Trout even got the barrel anywhere near the ball was impressive.
Well, Trout's not bad. Okay, let's Trout's a pretty good ball player. Okay, so
yeah.
But it was the matchup everybody wanted to see. It happened, and it was the zenith of the World Baseball Classic. And obviously, when we turn on the World Baseball Classic in 2026, that's going to be the highlight, that pitch, and that's all it's going to get talked about. Because I would think they both play 3 years from now. That's somewhat of a guess, but I would think they're both playing, barring any kind of injury thing. But I wasn't as big a fan of the World Baseball Classic as you, but if it gets people talking about baseball, then I'm all for it.
I love USA international competitions of any kind. Like I've said many times, I am a Olympic junkie and get into it. And so and unfortunately, baseball's not in the Olympics every year. There's not enough countries that play it, so it's sort of an elective sport depending on the host nation. And so we don't get these opportunities many times to see. And then nowadays in the Olympics, they don't allow the big leaguers to play. They did college. And then in the late 90s or 2000s, rather, the 2000 Olympics, when they won the gold in Sydney, you started using minor leaguers, and that's where they are. They don't use big leaguers. So you don't get a chance to see the best of the best going up against each other. And we still don't necessarily see the best. I mean, obviously Aaron Judge didn't play in this thing and stuff like that. So it's not always the best, but it's as close, it's as close as we can get. And so, I mean, to see this high level baseball is absolutely incredible. No doubt in 2026, they will play some stage. They should play the semifinals and finals after what Miami did and the interest and it's an international city. And I mean, they love baseball there. People from all over the world, easy flights in and out. Like to me, that's where the semifinals and finals need to be. It's near spring training. There's so much benefit to it. And play the semifinals in Phoenix, which makes a lot of sense with spring training there and the weather and all that, and then play the finals in Miami.
Well, the Marlins need to take note because they can't draw anybody yet.
No.
This should tell them that if you put a fun, interesting product, attractive product on the field, you'll put some people in the seats. So, that was the thing. It was like, hey, they got all these people at these games. Now I get the international flavor is different than if the Marlins are playing, whoever.
Also, there was a lot of seats probably in the upper deck that when people sat at them for the first time, they had to take the plastic off the seats.
Like Yeoman Stadium, your
right,
famous
exactly,
line.
Right. All right, let's talk about this. You mentioned Major League Baseball. There's a lot of buzz right now with rules. A lot of people during spring training wanting to change some rules prior to opening day, which is right around the corner.
Opening day is a week from tomorrow. Next Thursday, the 30th, all 30 teams play. That's rare. There's always been staggered opening days. Not now. Every team plays. And the Players Association, now that you got this 5-6 week snapshot of the new rules, they're wanting to relax the pitch clock when nobody's on base. They say relax. I don't know if it's going to go from 15 to 18 seconds or maybe to 20 seconds no matter what, like it is when there is a guy on base. Also, the hitter, they want the hitter to have an extra couple of seconds when he steps in and avoid that quick pitch thing that kind of Max Scherzer started doing. So the MLB has said they are open to looking at this. Now, if they're going to do anything, it's going to be before next Thursday. They're not going to open the season and then change it. So I'm very curious to see whether they'll do something about it. I applaud MLB for saying, okay, we're open to this. Let's take a good look at it and see what we want to do or not do. So if you're a baseball fan, you need to be looking real soon at whether or not MLB will make a slight alteration. I repeat, slight alteration to the rules with the season opening a week from tomorrow on Thursday, March 30th. All right, Ronnie has jumped away for a second. We gave right back in. There you go. Whoop, there we go. Boom, boom. There we go. All right, so it'll be interesting to see if there's any changes, and they're going to come down the pipe very soon. They're not going to start the season and then change.
Yeah, I hope they do something quickly, and I'm okay with. I like the idea of giving the guys a couple, a beat or two after they get in the box. I mean, come on.
Well, Ronnie, yesterday I was watching a spring training game, Yankees and the Tigers, and the Yankee pitcher, Severino, who's really good, by the way. You might want to bet on him this year. I mean, he broke his hands. The clock said 1 second on the pitch clock. And the ump put his hands up and called ball 4. And you could hit, there was a live mic right near Aaron Boone because he yelled at the home plate umpire, Larry, no, that's not right. Larry was the first name of the plate umpire. And in all the replays, the ump jumped the gun on it, and Boone, and then they interviewed Boone in the dugout like an inning later, and they said, what were you saying? He goes, I didn't think that the clock got to 0 when he began his move. And the announcers went, we looked at the replay, it didn't. So, that was, it's kind of like the thing. They made the analogy of the delay a game in football, okay? That back judge is looking at the play clock, and if he sees 0, then he's supposed to look at the ball, and if it's not moving, then throw the flag and it's delay a game. You got that kind of like the 3 seconds in the lane in basketball. Like if you 1001, 1002, 1003, you look away real quick, you look back, if he's still there, then you hit the whistle. Baseball, and they're going to have to convince the umpires to do it the same way in all parks, all games, first inning through the 9th inning.
Yeah, and they just, you rather than make the mistake of giving the guy an extra second versus jumping the gun. I mean, that's ridiculous,
Yeah, because I don't think anybody in the Tiger dugout would have said, "Oh no, he was a second late with the windup."
Yeah,
they're not going to say that.
Well, what's the rush here, guys? I mean, we got this clock to speed up the game, not because we really want to affect the game, but because we just want people to go faster so that our fans don't get bored. I mean, that's all that the reason. That's the whole reason the rule is there. It has nothing to do with the game. And by calling balls or calling strikes, if it's the hitter, you're affecting the game. That's not what the intent of the rule is. The intent of the rule is everybody's got ADD, and you've got everybody who's got a million choices of entertainment and a million Netflix subscriptions, and they're just trying to say, hey, can we make the games be 240 instead of 310? So that for 162 games, people can save some time and they won't, they'll enjoy baseball. Maybe we'll bring a younger crowd for the future of baseball. That's all that's for. And they need to understand that.
Well, you're right. They affect the game. Because if you call ball 4, the pitch could have been strike 3. It was a full count when it happened. Okay. So you have affected the game. Good point, Ron.
All right, so Friday, LSU women's basketball, 4:00, Utah. A great place to watch it is at Barstool Sportsbook inside LeBare's Casino. So this will be LSU women's basketball. They're going to have their work cut out for them. They're the number 3 seed taking on a very good Utah team. We'll talk about Utah on Friday morning, tell you a little bit about their team and what Angel Reese is up against, but great place to go as good food. And, play hooky from work, get off about 3:00, run over to Barstool Sportsbook, place a bet at the window there, and they got great food. They got the lazy boy chairs, big tables if you got a big group, TVs everywhere, giant screen, and that'll be awesome. And then when the game's over with, about 6:00 or so, then head right over to the box for the 6:30 start with Skeens.
7:00 start.
Oh, they're going to go 7? Okay, good. And then the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, we told you, but we teased it. Malcolm Roach signed with the Saints. Gardner Johnson headed to Detroit, the free agent, DB that the Saints traded away. It made a big impact on their team. They couldn't reach a deal. He went to Philadelphia. Up there, played in the Super Bowl. Now he's headed to go play with some New Orleans Saints coaches with the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, so a couple of other free agents signed. Got an offensive tackle, got another defensive back. So the Saints are, continuing to mold the roster. Heck, the NFL draft's about a month or so away, just a tad over a month. Late April, I think, is the NFL draft. So, a lot of Saints fans excited about Derek Carr. But you're going to have more than Derek Carr, and that's what Mickey Loomis and the front office are working on.
All right, tell us about Tremonti's, TK.
Well, Tremonti's, you got boiled crawfish, live crawfish, everything you need for the weekend. If you're tailgating out at the Arkansas game or wherever you might be, they can also do on-site catering. Lunch special today is lasagna. Come on by and get some, but they got all the wine and bourbon and whiskey you need. All the steaks, the Chairman's Reserve meats, the Wagyu steaks, if you want some of that. The shrimp rolls, the ribeye rolls, it's all happening at Tremonti's Meat and Seafood. Jefferson Highway, right down the street in Parkview Baptist Church and School. Connect on Facebook and Instagram, or give them a call and say, get your catering order in. Boiled crawfish, live crawfish, all at Tremonti's Meat and Seafood.
All right, for Tommy Christ and Ronnie Rance, we'll be back Friday morning for more Sports Shorts Daily, presented by LeBear's Casino. Until then, have a good one, everybody.